Welcome, everyone. I'm Kimberly Boschman, and this is the Intentionally Intuitive Podcast. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the full moon that's coming up on September 29th. We're going to take a look at each individual life path number and the forecast that this full moon could bring forth. Before we do that, this, of course, is a general reading. If you would like a personalized reading where we'll take a deep dive into your own numerology chart or forecasts, just book some time with me. I would love to work with you. The information for my website and to book is in the description box below. All right, let's get into it. Sevens. Okay, so we got a lot going on around this full moon. So it's a full moon in Aries. So right off the bat, we have this like very strong, impulsive leadership, self-aware, self-driven, take the initiative kind of energy. But it's at a full moon, and full moons are often about things coming to completion, culmination, or the light being shed on something that we have been procrastinating around or avoiding that we need to address, that really needs our attention, right? So with Aries energy, I don't necessarily see this as like starting something new, but I do see it as requiring us to take the initiative or take the lead within our own lives to address whatever it is that we have been avoiding or not wanting to deal with, right? And so it gives us that sort of push to face it, deal with it, transmute it, and sort of release and move on type thing, to sort of clear the plate, so to speak, to allow something new to come in. So if there's anywhere in your life where you've been like sort of avoiding something or not dealing with it or procrastinating, this energy can come in and be like, all right, it's time. Let's deal with it. Let's make it happen. Let's work through it. Let's move on. Now for you all, this full moon is bringing forth a 7 cycle. So you're actually working with your own energy, which is incredibly beautiful. And so you also have, for your animal wisdom message, which is kind of funny, this came flying out of the pack, pun intended, you got the bald eagle. So with the bald eagle, this is very much aligned with Aries energy as well, because there's this leadership energy, there's this fearlessness, there's this ambition behind the eagle, right? When we see, if you've been lucky enough to see a bald eagle in the wild, they just sort of demand respect. There's like this presence about these birds where it's like, you kind of stand in awe a little bit, right? And when the eagle comes through with an animal wisdom message, it's really asking us to be the authority over our own life, right? Like to take the leadership role within our own life. That doesn't mean that we don't seek out guidance or assistance or advice, but it means when it comes to making the final decision, we are the ones that are making that decision based on our intuition, the knowledge that we have provided to us, what it is that we have that's been presented, but truly from our own inner knowing, right? Like our own inner guidance system. We sort of make that decision from there, and we move through that decision with authority, right? Without second guessing, without going back and like beating ourselves up because maybe we made the wrong decision, et cetera, et cetera. It's more of we make the decision, we move forward, and we don't second guess ourselves, and we deal with whatever consequences come from those decisions. And if it doesn't work out the way that we necessarily wanted it to work out, we don't beat ourselves up for it. We don't say, well, I should have made a better decision. No, you made the right decision in the moment. You're dealing with the consequences. You're learning from it. And maybe you'll make a different decision in the future. But everything serves a purpose, right? So it just becomes this energy of helping you to trust yourself. And that's such a big part of the journey for a 7 is trust, right? Trusting self, trusting others, trusting the universe. And truly trusting, right? Like surrendering to what you cannot control, doing whatever, showing up, putting in the effort towards the things that you can have some level of control over, but releasing what it is that you don't have control over and trusting, right? Or if something happens that doesn't really sit well or doesn't feel aligned or whatever the case may be, trusting yourself to be able to move through it and to make the decisions that are best for you in that moment, right? So again, with Aries, with the bald eagle, with you all working with your own energy, I would say that there's a lot of potential of themes coming up around authority, taking the leadership within your own life, owning that responsibility, and trust, right? Like trusting yourself. I would also say, again, when I think about the bald eagle, there's just this presence to this raptor, right? There's like this, yeah, I mean, that's the word that keeps coming up, right? Like presence. And it doesn't even have to say anything, obviously, right? But it's going to like demand respect. And there's something here about that with you making sure that in your connections, in your own life, that you're taking up space, right? You're taking up ample space. And you have authority over that space, right? You're not being easily influenced. You're not being easily swayed by other people's expectations or what they desire from you or want from you. You're checking in with yourself and you're making sure that the decisions that you're making feel right for you. The journey of the 7, and that's why I kind of love when we have our own energies that we're working with in a cycle, because it really does sort of highlight or pinpoint those areas where it is that we need to pay attention or do a little bit of extra work or whatever the case may be. So for 7s, this is really a journey of, this lifetime is really a lifetime of self-discovery. I mean, I would say that for anybody, but for 7s, it's more concentrated, right? It's much more concentrated. This is definitely a lifetime where 7s almost require periods of solitude to really go within, to really do that self-reflection and that introspection, and to move through sort of like almost, I think of like a scanner, right? Where it's like you're moving through the mental, then you're moving through the body, you're moving through the spirit, right? And you're discovering things about yourself in this lifetime that can only be discovered through those moments of contemplation and self-discovery, as well as the experiences that you're going to move through. But in this lifetime, you are meant to have that greater self-discovery, and through that process, trust yourself, and then trust others, and trust the universe or God or whatever you subscribe to. And that's not easy, right? Because we are always confronted with things that would make it easy to not trust, right? To distrust. And that's part of the journey, right? Like overcoming that and finding the solution type thing. So you may see at this full moon that things are coming to culmination or wanting to be moved through or dealt with that and released, right? So you could see like mindsets, belief systems that are no longer serving you or that haven't been serving you, coming up for reevaluation. Or there could be some kind of very physical experience that sort of creates this deeper awareness of yourself. And through that process, you're able to be a little bit more vulnerable, be a little bit more trusting, put yourself out there a little bit more. It's very easy for a 7 to go into hermit mode and not come out of it. And so it's important that you continue to have those moments of solitude, do the work, whatever's required in this moment, and then integrate, right? Like integrate back into society and all those things, to practice what you've sort of learned, to put to use what it is that you've learned. So yeah, the other thing I would say is 7 energy. And again, you are working with your own energy, this cycle. 7 energy, there's 2 sides to it, right? And you become the bridge of those 2 sides of yourself. One is very spiritual. One is very ethereal, right? More metaphysical. Then you have the very physical, the body, like everything practical, knowledgeable, logical, etc., right? The truth of you in this human experience. And so it can be a very, mental journey, right? Like in the mind, very, I would say Virgoan, right? Like very Virgo entered, very Virgo centered, where you're constantly overthinking, over analyzing, over like just over everything with the mind. So it may be that during this full moon of Aries, right, which is a little bit more impulsive, Aries doesn't overthink. Aries is like, I see it, I want it, I'm going for it, because it's governed by Mars, right? And the 7 has this very like practical side to itself, where it's very deep in its human experience. It's very grounded. There's a lot of roots, right? And so I would say for this full moon, if you can do things that allow you to calm the mental chatter, like truly calm it, right? Give yourself a pause, then do it. This is a beautiful time to do it. And what I would say is, like if you're someone who meditates, or if you go on walking meditations, whatever the case may be, take this time to truly pause. So if you're a meditator, when you meditate, go into that meditation with the intention of clearing the mind, meaning a thought comes in, you acknowledge it, you release it. Thought comes in, you acknowledge it, you release it. Acknowledge, release, acknowledge, release. This meditation that you may do, if you decide to do it, the purpose of it is to give you peace of mind, not to come up with solutions, not to come up with answers, not to come up with self-discovery or whatever. But if it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes a day, and I would say during this full moon cycle, this is a great time to do this. But during that period of time, whatever you commit to, your goal, your intention is strictly to clear the mind. So if something tries to come in, which it will, because that's the way the mind works, if it comes in, you acknowledge, you release, you acknowledge, you release, you acknowledge, you release. And then if you continue to do this, then as a practice, right, then in your waking life, when you're not meditating, then when intrusive thoughts come in, when those sort of overthinking, overanalyzing, like sort of beating yourself up, whatever the case may be, that very like mental chatter, that's those limiting belief systems, whatever, when they come in, you can immediately recognize this is not for me. Acknowledge, release, acknowledge, release, acknowledge, release. Don't give it energy. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't overthink it. Just acknowledge, release, right? And you will eventually start to see the thoughts that serve you and the thoughts that don't serve you. And the thoughts that don't serve you, instead of serving them, just acknowledge and release. So I know I kind of spent a lot of time on this, but I just think there's a lot potentially coming in around this full moon, especially with Aries, especially with Eagle coming through, especially with you working with your own 7 energy, that it could be, I don't know, right? Like just some things that you may want to work through to deconstruct the fear, to deconstruct the mental chatter, to deconstruct and to remind the ego that you've got this, right? You've got this under control. You are the authority of your own life, and any decision that you make is the right decision every single time, and you will deal with the consequences, and you will be great, right? So this is much longer than I wanted to spend, but hopefully that's helpful. I do think it's going to be probably a little bit of an intense full moon, potentially, but I think it has the potential to be very much like to push you into your own power, even more so, especially with Eagle coming through. So I hope it's a great one. Thanks, 7s. Bye for now.